I love you so much. But I've always wanted a partner to be on the same wavelength. And so today I can't. Like, I asked him about like Black Lives Matter, and I'm no expert, but like when I asked him about it, he was like, I guess I've never really thought too much about it. That affected me, especially in our own city. Like, how could it not? How did it not make you think about something? I asked him too, like, what his church's views are, and he said he didn't know. And so then I watched a sermon online.
From his church?
About, sexual identity.
Okay.
And it was traditional. I told that to Ben.
And that's not it.
He doesn't really have much to say about it, you know? I want him to think about that stuff. Sometimes I did wonder if it was surface, fun, carefree love that we had. Equality, religion, the vaccine.
That right there was Ben and Sarah from season 8 of the Love is Blind finale in a clip that has now gone extraordinarily viral because many people find it absolutely ridiculous that somebody would go to a marriage altar and decide to call off a marriage at the absolute last second over George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, the gays, and of course, the COVID vaccine. Now, full disclosure, I am actually a viewer of this show, Love is Blind. I love my trashy reality shows, so I can tell you that many a commentator that are going over this particular show are missing a greater overall point related to this potential couple, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Not only the left-wing cringe, not only the fact that this guy was very lucky in that she didn't say yes, even though I believe he would have said no right after her, but of course, I also want to talk about the fact that this woman did all of this, staged all of this, so she could look fantastic on television, when in reality, the actual result of this is that she got hate from the very groups of people that she was virtue signaling about the entire season. Now, we're going to break this down. We're going to talk about this. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticeword.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
So for those of you who are unaware, I actually talked about this a little bit the other day when I was on Matt Christensen's show, and we went over the basics of this particular storyline. However, I wasn't able to flesh it out in the way that I wanted. Also, that particular live stream that I was on with Matt was airing at the same time as the Love is Blind reunion, so I didn't have all the full information of how this would develop a year later, but let me give you the basics of the particular show. So the contestants on Love is Blind essentially participate in what they call a 6-week experiment or something thereabouts. The first part of the experiment, they speak to people in the pods, and they are supposed to fall in love and engage with this person or get engaged with this person based on their voice and their talking alone. It's supposed to remove all the superficial things to prove whether or not love is blind. And it turns out the overarching message throughout this series that we've seen repeatedly is love is definitely not blind, because time and time again, the couples do not make it to the altar or they do not get married. And in this particular season, which featured 16 singles on the male side and 16 singles on the female side, resulted in just one wedding. One couple got together, and there were a bunch of engagements, and by the way, they all fell through, many of which for political reasons. So obviously the show's premise is ridiculous, but why do people keep going on it is a question that you might want to ask. And the reason for that is that they go on for fame, and the best way to achieve fame is to look good or look like the victim throughout the course of the series, and that is to get a favorable edit. And one of the ways that you get a favorable edit is by expressing the appropriate talking points, the appropriate views and whatnot, and this is the angle that Sarah was going to go with. On top of that, the overwhelming majority of the audience for these reality TV shows are women. Obviously, Netflix is a left-wing organization with left-wing values, so a lot of left-wing women end up watching this. So if you're a woman, you have an unfair advantage over the men in that when you get your heart broken, more women are going to side for you. And in addition to that, if you express left-wing values, you will also gain advantages in terms of public perception in general. So a lot of the men on this particular season were not about the woke nonsense that was being put forward by the women. They didn't want to talk about politics because they understand fundamentally that if you express a conservative worldview, you will get a poor edit from the producers, you will look bad, you will be demonized, and it's absolutely shameful that they do this. But then again, you shouldn't sign up for these reality shows because they tell you in the contract that they can edit you out of context and portray you any any way that they want, and that is something that was experienced by another contestant who also matched with the Feminist. But this woman, Lauren, who got engaged to a man called Dave, was portrayed as the victim, was portrayed as a hero, even though we find out throughout the course of filming that she was essentially seeing somebody up until the moment that filming started. But Dave, not being okay with a woman expressing her sexuality, even though, again, she didn't really break up with this guy, was portrayed as a villain, was portrayed as an idiot, was portrayed as somebody who's too obsessed with what everybody else thinks, even though had the roles been reversed, had he been seeing somebody up until the week that they started filming and didn't really break up with that person, he would have been portrayed as the villains. Now, the reason I give you guys that background, the reason I give you guys that explanation is because it's very important for you guys to understand that this is the disadvantage that men have when they participate in these particular shows. Again, we've heard this time and time again in our real life that if a man has a standard, that is treated as evil and villainous and whatnot. However, women can have any kind of standards, double standards, multiple double standards, conflicting standards, and they will be treated as the heroes. They will be treated as people who need to be protected, and anybody who goes against that or challenges that will be painted again as villains. And this is 100% true in terms of the way that the show Love is Blind works. There are two rules on Love is Blind that will get you a bad edit. One is going after women, and this is, by the way, the only way that a woman will be portrayed poorly on this particular show. And the second way is going after the premise of Love is Blind. Anybody who's against a reality TV show, dating, marriage experiment, whatever, that has a horrible failure rate, by the way, they will be painted as the villain because the show is painted as good, women are painted as good, men are painted as bad, and of course, it has a left-wing bias. So throughout the whole course of this series, Sarah was bringing up Black Lives Matter repeatedly and talking about how it was her core values. In fact, this came up so early in the series, and she had a freak out about it, that basically it was in their second date that was portrayed to us out there in the audience.
So, George Floyd, that obviously hit home because George Floyd happened in Minneapolis. What are your thoughts on Black Lives Matter?
Like, I'm not one way or another, I just kind of keep out of it.
I think it's very valuable and important to think about those things. And knowing you, it's not like you're actively like racist, but I personally believe what happened to George Floyd and everything else that happened, I don't think that's right at all.
Yeah.
What's so important is to speak up for things that are happening around us, right? You know, like our voice really does matter.
Yeah. I've just kind of been staying out of it.
I don't like those answers.
Teaching people like fundamental values, I can't teach that.
I just got a girlfriend?
I don't know.
No, I thought you were actually saying.
So he did vote.
Oh, okay. And I'm like, okay, what do you think about Black Lives Matter?
Yeah.
And he said, honestly, like, I just like haven't like educated myself on it. That's important to me.
Yeah.
Now look, a lot of people have taken this particular clip right here where Ben gets the red flags about this woman and said that Ben should have pulled out of this particular relationship right away because they don't have alignment on their fundamental values. And again, I understand that, I get that, but you have to understand that Ben is also trying to be famous. He's also trying to look good. So ending up getting out of the relationship at this moment in time would have not been a good look for him. He would have been painted as the villain. Also, expressing your political views on a left-wing show would have painted him as the villain. So he just does the thing where he's like, well, I don't really have a strong opinion on it and whatnot, and all these other things, which ends up supposedly angering Sarah. However, at this point in time, it is important for you guys to understand that they are in the dating phase. They are not engaged or anything of the sort. In fact, they get engaged after this. They go on the vacation that the show sends them on after this, and then they live together for about 5 weeks up until the moment of the wedding. And by the way, you can pull out of the show before the wedding, but Sarah decided not to do so. She instead goes through all these different virtue signaling exercises where she talks about how she cares about these woke social justice kind of issues, but then ultimately ends up getting back with Ben. And throughout the whole course of the show, this ends up rinsing and repeating. And what's hilarious about this is that the whole time she's trying to be painted as this warrior for social justice, somebody who cares about the crucial issues of our time. But if you look at the reaction from the left wing prior to the clip at the wedding going viral, the left wingers hated this woman. They said that she was a fake fake ally, that essentially she would virtue signal about all these different various communities, and even though she wasn't getting the information that she wanted from Mr. Benjamin right here, she would ultimately end up getting back with him, again, just using these issues to prop herself up, and then backtracking on all those different various positions, that she was getting a lot of crap from her lesbian sister and her lesbian sister's 55-year-old lover. And by the way, yes, this is absolutely a weird couple, not saying anything, I'm just saying, and by the way, I don't care about people being a gays or lesbians or anything of the sort, but this is how she was portrayed to the public, and I don't even think Netflix was aware of the fact that this woman was getting a bad edit unintentionally because she was reading as such a hypocrite. Again, she brought up these issues time and time again. She said that these were her core values. She said that she didn't like Ben's answers repeatedly, and then she stayed with him because she wanted to be on television longer. She wanted to have her big moment at this particular wedding where she says, I gotta make my stand based on my fundamental issues, and you could tell that she did not have this go the way she wanted it to go in the moment, because as she was walking off, nobody was asking her how she was, but she almost like had a stroke and she's like, I'm fine, I'll see you outside, in a clip of this particular video that doesn't necessarily go as viral as the rest.
See me in the back. See me in the back. See me in the back. I'm fine. I'm fine. Get me out of here. You guys, really, I'm okay.
So yeah, while a lot of people are taking her clip where she talks about the COVID vaccine, talks about Black Lives Matter, again in 2024 when they filmed this, as if it is the crucial element of this, it's actually all of the stuff in the background that really goes to show you how cynical an actor this woman actually is. Because again, she knew about all the differences in fundamental values that were supposedly deal breakers for her throughout the whole course of the series. She knew that Ben was not into politics, he was not into the woke stuff for weeks and weeks and weeks, yet she continued to pursue this relationship in order to get to the point where she could get to the altar, where she could give this speech, and this is exactly what ended up happening as a result of it. She ends up making these statements, thinking she's taking a strong stance, but throughout the whole course of a year, this ends up getting edited together, released to the public, and even the left-wingers are sick of her nonsense. Essentially, they treat her like this person who's concerned with Black Lives Matter, that doesn't have any black friends, that thinks that posting a black square, if you remember that nonsense from back in 2020, is the be-all end-all of your activism, and they're 100% right. This is superficial activism. This is her trying to portray herself as better than she thought, as better than everybody else, and what's hilarious about this is we found out in the reunion that after this, Ben, who was very smart in terms of how he wanted to play this for television, asked her if they could stay together. She ended up staying together with him, so the fundamental differences in values were really discussing, but then we're gonna date for a week, and then Ben called it quits and cut this woman off as soon as she moved to Nashville, Tennessee. It's absolutely hilarious in my opinion, and it's a perfect example of how fraudulent and phony this person actually is. Now, by the way, we actually had another couple with similar issues that ended up breaking down. This was the black couple. The male in this black couple, a guy named Devon, was told repeatedly by the person that he was seeing, a girl called Virginia, that black people need to vote Democrat, and she didn't like the fact that he described his family as more conservative, and he also didn't want to talk about politics on television because he understood how badly he was edited. In fact, at one point in time during the dating portion of this, the black guy was between two different women. One of them told him that she was dating a woman prior to coming on the show, and he decided that he wasn't interested in that. He's not interested in somebody who doesn't have their sexuality fixed, and that woman was very offended by the fact that he wasn't interested in her based on her preferences. So again, he was already being painted a little bit badly based on that, but intelligently, he refused to talk about politics throughout the whole course of the show, and ultimately he ended up in a situation where he looked pretty decent, and the woman looked unhinged, and after they ended up ending the marriage, even though she was saying he was a good guy throughout the whole course of the series, she attacked him repeatedly and mercilessly, and basically threw everything she possibly could at him in order to make it stick, even though this guy was just somebody who didn't really believe in abortion, and he voted for the Republicans, and his family was a Republican voting family. But she accused him of trying to steal money and a bunch of other ridiculous, absurd things that just go to show you how crazy these people actually are.
So, I mean, something I just want to make clear too about, Sarah's reason to say no at the altar with the social issues and everything. I knew coming into this experiment, I definitely have had privilege in my life, and it's something that I wasn't proud of, and something I knew I needed to grow. And then coming into this, I knew it was important to Sarah in the pods. And so I want to be vulnerable and be like, hey, I haven't given it much thought. And, I'm embarrassed the way that, our conversation had gone at the beginning there. But then we had great conversations about it. And so there's just a definite impact on me. And I have Sarah to thank for that. And I know it's kind of sad that it took, someone to make me think that way.
Now, of course, Ben ended up concluding in the reunion by saying that he wasn't educated enough on this woke stuff and he needs to learn. He has a lot to learn because he has white privilege, which is absolutely ridiculous and absurd, but I understand based on the way that the show is intended to work and based on the fan base, why he would do that to pander to the fan base. Again, Ben is not me. He's not somebody who's self-employed with their own platform who actually gets rewarded for expressing these opinions. A lot of these people work in regular, ordinary jobs, and they will ultimately end up getting fired or face severe backlash for expressing their beliefs. They will get canceled because, of course, the left is far more intolerant than the right when it comes to political differences. That being said, this was just a display of weakness that I found disgusting, and I wish Ben or anybody in this particular reunion would have held these females accountable for their bad behavior. There was one guy, one person, a conspiracy nut, who ended up dating another female conspiracy nut who held a female on this stage accountable for her actions, and that was the only guy who had any stones throughout the whole course of the reunion, and I do appreciate that guy for standing up to the toxic feminist girl that, again, has just been a nasty person throughout the whole course of the series, or for the season anyway, and that is really where we're at in terms of the reality TV. However, I will say, there is also another lesson that Love is Blind teaches us time and time again, each and every season, because the show tends to feature disproportionately women that are over 30, women that were career focused, and women that truly demonstrate the lie of feminism. In reality, a lot of these dudes are perfectly fine dudes. A lot of them are successful. Even if they're not successful, they will go on to be some kind of influencer or something of the sort. But what we see time and time again is that the feminist belief that the guy has to be totally in line and obey everything you say, and it also has to, support your career and all of that, ends up cracking, ends up falling apart each and every time it's on the stage, and very few women over 30, unless they actually get over some of those feminist lies that they bought into, end up in happy marriages from the show. But time and time again, what we see is that the people who embrace the feminist lie, they end up in a lot of trouble. So that Lauren chick who was dating somebody up until the moment that they started filming, she may get the girl boss, yeah, you go girl, you're allowed to sleep with whoever you want and all that, but she ends up leaving alone. You have the Virginia woman who didn't like the fact that she was dating a black conservative who had his parents married, his grandparents married, and everybody with successful marriages all throughout his family. She ends up alone, and she's over 34 at this moment in time and thinking about freezing her eggs because she doesn't believe that she will be able to have children naturally at this moment in time based on the choices that she made. Again, you see this repeatedly throughout the whole course of these particular shows, and it's kind of the undergirding message of the series that Netflix unintentionally is showing us time and time again. Now, with all that being said, I want to know what you guys think about this stuff down in the comments below. Do you think that this Ben character should have stood up to this woman and broken it off with her almost immediately? Or do you understand my point about how the show edits political differences if you're coming from a right-wing perspective versus when you're promoting the basic left-wing talking points? In addition to that, do you understand what I mean about how this girl essentially tried to set this guy up to slaughter him for television purposes as a giant virtue signal, and how it ultimately ended up backfiring on him? What do you think? All your thoughts down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about somebody breaking up over Black Lives Matter and the COVID vaccine. Till next time.